Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. The point of today's show is to show the point of the candidacies of Mayor Pete and Elizabeth Warren. Why are they even in the race? And so to start off, let's look at The Hill Rising and see what they think.
There's a piece in the New York Times, Jonathan Martin, who I respect a lot, but they has this piece about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, how their real problem is each other. And Johnny, look, there's some truth to it. If you ask Sanders supporters who their second choice is, they say Warren. Warren's supporter second choice is Sanders. But the guy who's leading the pack, Joe Biden, his supporter second choice also Bernie Sanders. And there's a lot more of those. And he's the one who is the barrier to ultimately winning the nomination at this point.
That's right. And I mean,
Okay, so there's an idea that Joe Biden is the most likely person to win the nomination. And that's true. And there's a reason for that. All right, let's see what this guy thinks.
I think up to this point, looking at the previous debates, it seems like there's more been a multiplier effect in terms of the progressive energy that's coming from Bernie and Warren. And I think they've done, a great job on the debate stage playing off each other. Eventually, they're going to have to decide who's the best candidate. And I think Bernie clearly has the pugnacity. He's the only one that I think could ultimately take on Donald Trump on the debate stage. So I think they'd be smart.
Okay, so that's a good point and true that Bernie is much more able to take on Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren is not there, I posit, to take on Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren is there to block Bernie. Mayor Pete is there to block Bernie. They both have their angles and their strategies, but the strategies, if you look underneath my beautiful picture here, is a tweet that came from Bernie Sanders a while back. The cat is out of the bag. The corporate wing of the Democratic Party is publicly anybody but Bernie. This was when they started to swing their support behind Elizabeth Warren, and the media had a love fest with Elizabeth Warren, and then Bernie took a snipe at Elizabeth. They know our progressive agenda of Medicare for all, breaking up big banks, taking on drug companies, and raising wages is the real threat to the billionaire class. He said this in the context of criticizing Elizabeth Warren. So what he's tacitly admitting here is that Elizabeth Warren is not part of the progressive agenda of Medicare for all, breaking up big banks, taking on drug companies, and raising wages. She's controlled opposition. She's lip service. And we've made that point over and over again. So the cat that's out of the bag here is that the oligarchs don't want Bernie. The oligarchs would rather have Trump, obviously, or Elizabeth, or Pete, or Joe, or Kamala, or, who dropped out, or any of the others. But the person they consider an existential threat is Bernie Sanders. So Elizabeth's point isn't to win the presidency. It's to block Bernie from winning the nomination. So as you go along, you see people on the left, they make all these points as though everyone's in a race, a fair race, and we're all trying to win. We're all trying to get to the finish line ahead of each other. Bernie, Pete, Joe, and Elizabeth are all in this fair race trying to get ahead of each other and cross the finish line first and run faster. But what we're not looking at is that they have their elbows out, and they're not running to win. They're running to keep someone else from winning.
Smarter going with Bernie, but I think as far as today is concerned, I think they help each other amplify the progressive voice.
I also think, elite media just does not, they either willfully don't understand or they can't wrap their head around the way that these two candidates are actually very different. I mean, you can look at some of the surface level. Yes, she used to say she supported Medicare. She still says she supports Medicare for all, but that's called into question at this point. They have some policy similarities, but the way that they approach politics, their theories of change, and the coalition that they attract are both so different, and the media has never been able to wrap their head around that.
I think we also have to look at, yes, I think think you're entirely correct. And the people that do their homework on Elizabeth Warren find out how diverse her background really is, not just higher academia, but she was also conservative, who became a Democrat. So there's a transition for her as a professional and then as a politician, which stands completely contrasted to what Bernie Sanders is offering. What the general public understands is that they're both to the far left, and if that base out there wants to get excited about a strong ticket, they either have to take jabs at each other to distinguish themselves more forcefully, or come together and decide they're going to be a joint ticket.
And that's
Okay, so he's closer to the truth. He sees that they're not alike, but he sees that Elizabeth is perceived to be a far left, as though that's true. It's not true. He probably knows it's not true, but she's perceived that way. So that positions her perfectly to take Bernie support in the primaries. She's only there for the primaries. If they can keep Bernie from getting the nomination, she has done her part. They'll pat her on the head. They'll give her some, whatever, a position or money or both. And she'll have done her good girl job of keeping Bernie out. So that's Elizabeth's place. Elizabeth is a faux aggressive. She's a fake leftist. She's not really on the left. She's really a moderate Republican like Barack Obama. And so she will, whatever her hopes are, that's what will be the result if Elizabeth is elected. And again, that's not the point. They don't care about her getting elected. They know she won't get elected. They know that Donald Trump will get elected if she gets the nomination. But we're also used to thinking about, well, what kind of a president would Elizabeth be? And she has a zero chance of becoming president. So then we should just stop thinking that way. We should just stop even talking about what kind of a president Elizabeth would be or Mayor Pete would be, because that's not why they're there. And we have to wake up to that fact. I just keep watching these shows, and it doesn't seem like people totally get it. Now, this is what we're fighting. This is what Bernie is fighting against, and this is what the corporate oligarchs are fighting for. So what we really have is an epic battle between the oligarchs and Bernie Sanders and his ragtag assortment of grubby populists who are following him into battle.
A new UN report came out, and it basically verifies that everything around us is collapsing. Very uplifting stuff here. This
Kyle.
is NPR tweeting about it. A new UN report argues that many of the street protests popping up around the globe are driven by a growing sense that societies are rigged to favor the powerful and trap the masses in low-wage, dead-end lives.
Lives? No shit, Sherlock. That's what is going on with the oligarchs. They're trying to trap everyone in the world, all the workers of the world, and they don't like these street protests. They don't like the Occupy movement. They don't like labor strikes. They don't like the Yellow Vest movement. They don't like trucker and teacher strikes. That they're afraid. The oligarchs are afraid, just as they were in FDR's time. They're afraid that the people will rise up through leftist means and overthrow them. In guillotines and pitchforks and all that. They're afraid of the workers. And so Bernie is a champion of the workers. Bernie is trying to figure out how to unite the workers and mobilize the workers to run roughshod over the oligarchs. Unlike FDR, who just made deals with them, unlike Elizabeth, who would just make deals with them, Bernie wants to defeat them. And that's what Third Way, John Cowan, Center for American Progress, Neera Tanden, David Brock, Creative Artists Agency in Hollywood. That's what all of the oligarchs are trying to do, is to keep Bernie out, because Bernie is the existential threat. Bernie is the only one right now who's positioned to upset the apple cart, to run the gravy train off the tracks. The gravy train that Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan started. Well, they didn't start it, but they got it established and whooshing along the tracks. Here's a memory on my Facebook from 4 years ago. One of the significant factors concerning the 2016 Democratic Party presidential race is that corporate Democrats are scared of Bernie Sanders' quick rise in popularity in the Democratic Party. Panic-stricken. Even though they're trying to ignore him, the elitist media are trying to ignore him, and other people are scoffing and calling him old and saying he has no chance. They are scared shitless of Bernie Sanders. This explains why corporate Democrats support Hillary Clinton. This is 4 years ago. In political campaigns, you have to follow the money. Third Way has been very secretive about where its think tank funding comes from. However, several investigative journalists have uncovered some of the donors, and they are not surprising. The Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, AT&T. These are just a few donors to the Third Way. There is also a laundry list of hedge funds that are donating money. The bottom line is that Third Way is backed by Wall Street titans, corporate money, congressional allies, and corporate Democrats like Hillary Clinton. It is important, and Barack Obama. It's very, very clear that Barack Obama is sliming his way up out of the ooze to block Bernie in the same way that Hillary and Elizabeth and Pete are doing. It is important to note that these same corporate factions also donate to the Republican Party. So that's why they don't care what's going on as long as it's not Bernie. The existence of Third Way should not come as a surprise. There are essentially no economic differences between a corporate Democrat and a Republican. That's why Bernie must be stopped. And then we talked about Mayor Pete and why the young left are out to get him. And the young left understand, I think, of all the people who get the point, it's probably the young left. The Twitter left is really violently opposed to Mayor Pete. And so they have good reasons to be opposed. He's just there. Let me just lay it out here. He's just there to keep Bernie from winning in Iowa. They don't care what happens to him after that. He's discardable. They will discard him. The media love fest is already slowing down. The whole point of Mayor Pete, because his demographics, he isn't attracting the young at all. He's attracting the old white people that Elizabeth is attracting. Crystal Ball was saying that Mayor Pete and Elizabeth should take swipes at each other because they're competing for the same base. But even Elizabeth and Pete might not understand this, but their oligarchic string pullers understand. They have two different roles in defeating Bernie. Elizabeth's role is to pull away progressives from Bernie the true progressive versus Elizabeth the faux aggressive in the primaries. And Pete's job is the same, but temporary. Pete is going to pull away the white voters in the early states and then take a bow. And Elizabeth is going to keep sniping at Bernie all the way through, trying to pull away voters who consider her a second choice for Bernie, or a first put. Her supporters consider Bernie their second choice. But again, Crystal Ball is right that Elizabeth and Pete are competing for the upper middle class, affluent, white, well-educated liberals. And so the reason they're receiving backing from talent agencies, from the Clinton machine, from which are one and the same, from other powers behind the scenes, string pullers. The reason they're in the race to begin with, and the reason they weren't anywhere around when Hillary Clinton was running, is to block Bernie. That's their point. And that's the point of today's show. The point of Elizabeth, the point of Pete is to block Bernie. And we know who's behind it. Again, if you look at Third Way, if you look at Center for American Progress, if you look at David Brock astroturfing, if you look at Barack Obama really astroturfing, if you look at Michael Bloomberg, if you look at Deval Patrick, if you look at other heavy hitters, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, if they come in and put their thumb on the scale, which is what they're trying to do, their whole point is to deny Bernie the Democratic nomination. I don't think it will be that hard for Bernie to defeat Trump. I think that the hard part, obviously, is to get the nomination. So all of the power amassed against him isn't even going to matter after July. But what's going on right now is critical. American voters haven't even thought about it. They're getting ready for the holidays. They start to pay attention in Iowa and Nevada and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Super Tuesday. California is going to wake people up this year. But Mayor Pete's job is to just keep Bernie from sweeping the first few states, because if Bernie sweeps the first few states in the primaries, they're not going to be able to stop him. And that's when all hell will break loose. If they do deny Bernie the nomination and we get to Milwaukee and it looks like Philadelphia looked last time, and everybody's crying in their beer, oh, they rigged it again. They kept Bernie out again. What we need to understand is that we had our chance. And right now is our chance. In the next few weeks even, it's our chance to wake up all of the vote blue, no matter who, blue dog Democrats, and say, look, if you really want to beat Donald Trump, there's only one way to do it. You've got to get Bernie the nomination. The people who actually vote, the old white people who actually vote, the boomers, they have to come around sooner. They have to see that grubby populism is what's going to win this time. It's the only thing that's going to beat Donald Trump. And they have to get on board the Bernie or bust train sooner. So sing the song to them. Tell them to get on board that Bernie or bust train. Work it now. Don't wait until March or April. Don't wait until August or September, because by then it'll be too late. There's no way that we're going to unrig the process then. We have to unrig it right now. So get on board the Bernie or bust train. Get your friends to jump on board, and we'll run over these oligarchs, and we'll run over their sock puppet cronies. So there you go. That's the point. Keep on burning.
Get on board the Bernie or bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board